Hi all, this is ACDodd and welcome to another episode of On the Road Tuning. And this time we are briefly popping in to the Isle of Wight mini adventure, which I was just at this weekend. I haven't got a full episode of tuning for you namely because I didn't have a camera person to help me. So I've only got a couple of examples. And what I'm going to do therefore is show those, but also I'm going to talk to you about some of the parts and issues that I found. So as ever, enjoy. So here we are in the field. This is the Isle of Wight, and I'm down at the Isle of Wight mini adventure with the West Country Mini Club. They've invited me down to do some tuning for the weekend. So this is my stand. They very kindly put up a gazebo for me because in order to get everything in the car and get on the ferry and avoid the cost of taking an extra trailer, they provide me a gazebo, which is excellent. So thanks very much to the club for that. This is all my stuff set up, ready to go. As you can see, we've got the usual stuff, although for a couple of days when I'm away, I need to be able to charge my batteries. So I've obviously got a battery charger as well. The needle stash. They're all the used and modified ones that I have a selection of for different applications. Obviously my usual toolkits and spares. The needle modification station. Then I have under the bench, I've got my EcoFlow Mini, which is providing Sterling service this weekend, hooked up to a solar panel to keep me in energy. And I've got my exhaust gas analyzer. I've got a fan, obviously, because it's very warm this weekend. And yeah, hand tools, meters, etc, etc. Anyway, that's me. So what we'll do is give you a montage or a summary of some of the cars that we get to look at over the weekend. Okay, so we've got an original Alfie here. Nice looking car. And it's got like a factory gold seal replacement engine in, so not 1972 car. This one's got an A+ block, but an original replacement engine. Anyway, what we're doing today is dialing it in. So I'm just checking timing marks are all good, coil's good, timing was out, so I put 10 degrees on the timing, re-gap the spark plugs, and then we're going to work on the carburetor and see what the fuel is like. Okay, during tuning, this one started to flood out the float bowl. So on quick look, I found that you know, the usual ailment had come about, which is the actual needle valve. I don't know if you can see that there, but you can't quite see that, but I'll take a close up. It's got a big ridge in the seat, so the idea here is we can't tune that if the float level is continuously changing. So the carburetor seems fine in all other respects, so we're going to put a needle valve assembly in the float bowl and then continue with the tune. Okay, just to interrupt that stream there for a minute, I just thought I'd give you a little update on some of the parts and bits and pieces that we were using this weekend. To start off with, spark plugs. Now, as you well know, I like to make sure spark plugs are new. This comes from testing. I did a test some 30 years ago where I ran a spark plug for 5,000 miles and then re-dynoed an engine after it was dynoed with a new spark plug. And after 5,000 miles or 6 months, then that engine had lost 2 horsepower. So I took the spark plugs out, put a new set back in, and lo and behold, my 2 horsepower came back. So, you know, a spark plug is only as good as the day it went in. As soon as you put it in, it starts deteriorating. So just remember that. If you want to keep your engine sharp, keep putting plugs in. The next thing I want to say about spark plugs, and something that's come up the weekend, is still just about everybody I'm looking at puts a spark plug in and doesn't adjust the gap. Right, these come out of a packet way too big for a mini. Okay, so this is an older, because it's still got the cadmium plating on it, this is an older BP6ES spark plug. I've got 34 thou feeler blade there. Now putting that in, that fits exactly. Now that's as the plug come out of the packet. Now if you've got a 3 ohm coil or 1.5 ohm coil, you want to be running 25 thou. The way to do that, just give it a little tap. If you're working under the bonnet, I use the alternator body. Little tap, and then get your feeler blade at 25 thou. Okay, it's very easy to do. As you can see, I've already knocked that one down. Feeler blade in. Okay, and you want to do that until you've got a tight gap. Okay, so how tight is tight? Well, this is the way I like to gap them. Okay, so if the spark plug, okay, doesn't fall off the feeler and it holds on, that's a 25 thou. Now, if you've got a high power ignition system using a 0.8 ohm coil and electronic ignition, obviously you want to leave them at that size. They typically come out at 32 thou, so you need to check them even when they come out of the packet and gap them at 35 thou if you've got a 0.8 ohm coil. So something to remember. Only one car out of about 15 or 16 the weekend had the right gaps on the spark plugs. So yes, I know I'm only seeing the ones that people need for tuning, but that's still pretty bad considering that most of the owners fitted the plugs themselves. The other thing to remember is if the spark plug in your engine has got corrosion, chances are it's been in there too long anyway. So there's a good tip. If they don't shine like that or they've gone flat, generally start to think about changing them. While we're on the subject of plugs, one of the other thing that came up was the fact that people have been fitting the wrong heat range. So I had no less than 4 998 minis turn up. All were fitted with BP7 ES spark plugs, which, if you know anything about heat ranges, is far too cold a running plug for that type of engine. So when I questioned the owners, they all said that they just purchased the spark plugs from a known mini supplier, and that's what had been received. I do believe that it was the same mini supplier, so I'm not going to name names in this case, but what I will say is if you're asking for spark plugs, then ask for the correct spark plug rather than relying on the part supplier to send you what they've got in stock, because that's what I suggest has happened here. They hadn't got the right plugs, so they just sent a set of plugs that would fit in the hole and not necessarily the right ones. So just so you know, the BP7 spark plug, the effects of running these is when they run too cold, they don't get hot enough to burn the deposits off the tip, so you end up with an engine that's not quite as clean running. It's harder to start, and you can get misfires when it's been idling for protracted periods. So as I say, these plugs are really sort of aimed at the fast road 1380, you know, so well over 80 horsepower, 90 horsepower sort of road engine. So as I say, people fitting these into the into standard 998s is going to cause a problem. The next thing we had which was interesting was carb dampers. Okay, so I had a number of cars where either was the wrong damper fitted and it was causing the piston to rise too fast, regardless of the oil, or the damper wasn't working, so I had to change that, and that affected both HIF carbs, and I actually sold out of dampers, so HIF carbs and HS carbs. All right, so you can get the right dampers are simple. HIF, there's only one you want for a performance application. That's an LZX 2085. The other one to use on a single carb application for a HS application is AUC 8103. Okay, so moving on to ignition timing. Now this is one of the big issues. There was a lot of cars with ignition timing either too far advanced or way too retarded. Now retarded ignition timing causes late ignition of the fuel air mix, and it also causes hot running of the valves, the exhaust valves particularly. So if you run an engine for extended periods with retarded ignition timing, you're going to have a problem with burning valves. You're also going to have a problem with hot running after a period of time. So you know, it's costing you money So set that timing correctly. Equally, if you've got too much ignition advance, and there was plenty of cars there that had 10, I think the record at the weekend was over 50 degrees of ignition advance, you run the real risk, if that engine could develop full cylinder pressure, of actually melting a piston and ruining your engine. So it really is important that you actually set your ignition timing and know what it is, not just to idle, but right the way across the rev range if you want to save money and maximize performance. So obviously having the correct ignition timing means the engine runs safely, produces maximum power, and not only that, nowadays efficiently, and also with good emissions. Lastly, I just want to add, there was also the usual lot of cars where most of the ones I saw were running far too rich. So what I mean by that is people are still winding the mixture nut down or turning the screw in on a HIF carb to try and make the car run better. And all you're doing is washing the rings out, because when that engine's idling, it's running at 0.7 lambda typically. 0.71 was the richest I had this weekend. And the customer was explaining to me that the car's using a lot of fuel and I need it tuned. It's not just costing you fuel, it's costing you money in worn engine and lost performance, because that wear detracts and takes away the performance potential for your engine, because it ruins the ring seal. So the important thing is, if you're touching that mixer screw to make the engine drive properly, that's an indication that you need tuning. Okay, so if you have to turn that mixer screw after you've been for an MOT because it won't drive properly, you need a proper tune-up with a custom needle. Okay, next car in, we got a 998, it's a mid to late 70s one, so it's a low compression 998. Blow on the exhaust manifold, and the owner says it's just a bit flat, so let's have a dig in and see what we can find. Okay, getting into this one, interestingly, look at the plug gaps. Someone's gapped these right down, so they're not even 25 thou, they're like 15 or something like that. These are very, very small, and obviously we've got reasonable running on that one, but then we get progressively worse as we go down. So we'll put a new set of plugs in this one, gap them at 25, and then see what happens. Incidentally, I've also looked at the timing curve on this one, and we've got a short curve. So what I've had to do is adjust the timing to get the best of the curve for the customer today. The points gap was almost closed as well, so we've adjusted all that. We're going to put a new set of BP5 spark plugs in, and then we'll turn our attention to the carburetor. Okay, so I've got this one running. As I said, we went through the spark plugs. That made a huge difference to the way the engine was running. Obviously, because we got a short advance curve, I've just compensated by winding on a little bit of ignition advance, so we're now running at 14 degrees. Back engine, it's working, the coil's working, everything else is working. Got onto the carburetor, and interestingly, we had an AAP needle, which is quite lean in itself, but in this case it was actually very rich, especially at 4,000 and 5,000 RPM. So I've changed that needle and put in an AAC needle, which is a factory standard one for a later car, and it's fueling absolutely perfectly. So this one responds quite well. The only thing we've got with it is the carburetor's a bit warm, so our air-fuel ratio is changing a little bit, and our idle's not consistent. But let's let the owner go out in it and see what he thinks. Okay, I hope you found that useful and interesting. Just a little summary of my weekend down at the Isle of Wight mini adventure. Just want to say thanks to the West Country Minis for inviting me down, and obviously for Sandown Airport letting me do what I do on the Isle of Wight. So as ever, please like and subscribe, and if you want some training, you know where to come. Thank you very much.